an incredibly quick film to summarise some of the principles that we've got in Descartes' Meditations. So Descartes' Meditations parallels very nicely with Putnam's idea of the brain in the vat, particularly the idea of Descartes' evil genie. Putnam's version is simply a modern version of Descartes. What Descartes starts off with is a principle of doubt. He's a global sceptic. So if we take the idea that we are doubting, that we are not sure that anything is true, we're trying to get to a point at which we can be sure. We're trying to get to a point where we can establish that there is knowledge of something. If I look around and I see that even my candle is always changing, it was this high, now it's this high, I can't rely even on the candle. Alarmingly, Descartes talks about the properties of the candle and enumerates them, having earlier said that he can't actually talk about the properties of a candle. But there are some inconsistencies, very exciting about the inconsistencies, but the overall pattern is what we're looking at here. Descartes is modelling his meditations on those of the founder of the Jesuits, Loyola, who wrote a series of spiritual exercises. So if you go through these exercises, you are going to end up a better person. You're going to end up in a system. You can work your way to fulfill the demands of your Christian calling. In Descartes, you can fulfill the demands of your philosophical calling by following these meditations. You start off by attempting to establish absolute scepticism, absolute doubt. You can doubt everything. What you can't doubt is that doubting is going on. From this, we might draw the conclusion, cogito ergo sum. I think, thinking is a form of doubting, or doubting is a form of thinking. I think, cogito ergo, therefore, sum, I am. In fact, arguably, this isn't a realistic conclusion, because Descartes shouldn't actually be able to identify the pronoun. All he should really be able to say is that doubting is happening. But let's give him the benefit of doubt. And let's go on from there, because having established by doubting that there is a thinking thing that is doing that doubt, that he exists, he then has to say, well, how do I know that anything else exists? I don't. Everything else around me could be the machination of an evil genie, something conjured up by a maniacal version of Robin Williams' character in Aladdin, Baha. How do we know we're not victims of an evil genie, or in the Putnam version, victims of a mad Frankenstein-type scientist? We don't know. What Descartes then says is, well, what if the person who created us, the God who is in charge, is actually a good God? In the same way that my desk is a good desk, because things are not going to fall off it, because it's doing its job. My cat is a good cat, because it does its job. At the moment it's doing its job very nicely and sleeping. Both of them are sleeping. A good God is a God that does its job. A God that creates, a God that sustains, a God in whom we can trust. I can't trust a God who's lying to me. So how could Descartes establish that this God is a good God? He uses Anselm's ontological argument. He twists it slightly. Anselm, from the 11th century, Archbishop of Canterbury. Anselm comes out with the idea that God is a definition, that than which nothing greater can be considered. Id quo nihil maius cogitare potest. Descartes' version is simpler. Descartes simply says God is perfection. A perfect God must have all perfections. And one of those perfections must be existence, because, let's face it, a non-existent kiss is not as satisfying as an existent kiss, or put it in the negative. A non-existent slap, if I promise to slap you, that's not going to hurt as much as actually doing it. Actually doing it, you feel that effect. Talking about it is just some sort of vague abstraction. Mary Poppins does not exist, sadly. Unicorns do not exist, sadly, though we can talk about both. Until the cows come home. I often do. But to turn the perfect nanny into the perfect nanny, she would actually have to come and look after children. She's not doing that. She is not a perfect nanny. She doesn't exist, sadly. So what Descartes is saying is that the perfect God, to be perfect, must have existence. Now, there are plenty of people who then run on and will say existence is not a predicate. Existence is not something. Existence is a different order of statement than saying my hair needs cutting or my hair is long. My hair exists is a different statement, different type of statement. But for Descartes, within the realms of this argument, this works. At this stage, all we have to understand is what Descartes is trying to do. And that, in a nutshell, is that.